I have been meaning for a long time to make a video about Sam Harris and the sort of American Western secular meditation movement. It's this kind of icy, cool, logical, hyper-rational approach to meditative practices, completely pruning meditation of all woo-woo. I've been meaning to make a video about that topic. Sam Harris, secular meditation, and maybe the issue of empathy, because something that he's been speaking recently in a way that has stuck in my craw. Now, completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, I've got a friend who has a friend who is, I guess you would call him a modern day sadhu or a spiritual beggar in India. And this gentleman has an extremely different approach to spirituality than, say, a Western American secular meditation guru. Now, these are two very, very different approaches to the spiritual project. So let's start with my friend's friend, the sadhu. So I met with my friend the other day, and they told me about a friend of theirs who started off as a spiritual seeker here in Western Europe. And this guy didn't find what he was looking for. So he went to India, right? And he studied in different ashrams, and he eventually found himself in Varanasi, which is a very famous city in India on the Ganges, where many different sadhus and seekers and gurus gather. Now, in Varanasi, this guy joined a group of tantric practitioners. Now, this is not the tantra of like the Los Angeles workshop. We have this idea of tantra in the West, and it's so shallow, and we just can't access certain spiritual ideas and certain spiritual energies in the West. We have strong, rational, scientific, democratic energies, and I think that these energies scatter certain deeper spiritual energies that find expression in different cultures and can grow and flourish in different cultures. That's a theory of mine. I'm not wedded to it. It's a theory. Now, this seeker needed that sort of deeper tantric teaching, and he wound up in a very special group of tantric practitioners. Now, this is a very, very old lineage, and it's secretive, and it's blurry if you have sort of a reporter's type mindset, and you're coming at them with questions and trying to get at what they do through logic. And even my friend, when I am talking to them about her sadhu friend, my friend is a little bit vague when I press her on details. But these tantric practitioners have certain ways of I don't know how to put it, manifesting and practicing non-duality, and manifesting and practicing a lack of preferences. They have a way of bleaching out personal preference, like killing it as though it's a bacteria, right? With the bleach of hardcore tantric practices. What I'm saying is, You may or may not know, in Varanasi they have charnel grounds where they burn dead people out in the open, right? I mean, I don't know the specifics. This is not my lineage. Again, I apologize for getting details wrong, but I believe they wrap the corpses in perfumed shrouds or bandages, very perfumed, and they perform ceremonies where they burn the people. And then the bodies are left there. And there are meditators on these grounds. They are meditating on death. They are meditating on impermanence. They are in a graveyard living there. And that's what this guy did. This guy from like Western Europe, he's out there in India meditating on the charnel grounds. Now, there are other practices in these charnel grounds, one of which is eating the flesh of the dead. And I believe that this guy has done that. So, you know, there are bodies burning. I don't know, the families mourn, and then they leave. It's late at night. The body's still there smoking, and it's perfume-wrapped shroud, you know, the skull and the eyeballs probably still. And then I believe as part of their practice, these tantric practitioners will take some of the body and eat it. Now, I'm sure I'm getting this wrong. I'm sure there are lots of complicating details. Maybe it's just a tiny piece. Maybe it's more they smell things. I don't know exactly how it works, but I believe that this guy has done that. There are also defecation eating practices, which I believe this guy has also participated in. So he's like, you could say, from a certain perspective, the real deal. He eats poop and he's a cannibal. This is some serious tantric shit. On the completely opposite end of the spectrum of the tantric shit-eating cannibal, you have Sam Harris. Now, I remember being at the monastery in probably like the late 2000s and getting a book called The End of Faith by Sam Harris. So in this book, Sam Harris, post 9/11, wrote a book to bring the idea of monotheism to its knees, basically. He was very pissed off about the terrorist attacks on 9/11, and he saw a strain of illogical, dangerous, religious fundamentalism as being behind 9/11, but also behind a lot of American Christianity and maybe extreme Zionism. I remember reading this at the monastery, and I felt kind of validated in my decision to pursue Zen Buddhism after reading this book. I felt kind of cool. Like, yeah, you know, we don't need no stinking belief system in Zen. We don't rely on faith, etc. And I also read a book of his called The Letter to a Christian Nation. And these books were being passed around by all of us monks and priests because many of us were raised Jewish or Christian and found those religions to be lacking. So Sam Harris spoke to us. He has gone on in the years to confess that he is in fact a meditator. He studies, I believe, with Joseph Goldstein's Vipassana crew. So he has a podcast where he has on various intellectuals and thinkers, and he has an app called Waking Up, which has become a very important meditation app for a lot of people out there. I know a lot of people who get a lot out of it. So Sam Harris stands before us as the secular American he's a neurologist, scientific meditation guy. He's extremely logical and extremely rational. He is not a poop-eating cannibal. by any stretch of the imagination. Now, I've been listening to him recently. This is not a political comment that I'm about to make, so I want to make sure to get that across. This is not a comment on Israel, on Palestine, and that very complex, very heartbreaking, very difficult issue, okay? I want to thread the needle here very carefully. So I have to do a certain amount every week of mindless labor, and oftentimes to get through it, I will put on my headphones and I'll listen to a podcast. And Sam Harris is a person I will oftentimes listen to because he's incredibly erudite. It's like watching LeBron James play basketball. Listening to Sam Harris debate very prickly, thorny topics is similar. He's very intelligent and skilled at speaking, so I like to listen to him. So, I've been listening to him talk about Israel and Palestine, and I wound up racking up a lot of hours just listening to him discuss this topic. And it occurred to me as he spoke and spoke and spoke that he's defending Israel's right to defend itself, okay? And the reason Israel has a right to defend itself, in his eyes, is because there are certain minds in the Middle East that are sort of poisoned by this mind virus of theocratic Islamic fundamentalism. And in his mind, this Islamic fundamentalism is just totally poisoned rational minds. Okay, so I've been watching him continually defend what's happening in Gaza. And now again, I am not making a political point. It just occurred to me that in all of his many, many, many hours of discussing this topic, not once did he seem to indicate any empathy for the people in Gaza who are dying. The young children, the mothers, the men, the old people, the dogs, the buildings that are falling. Again, this is not a political commentary. I'm not talking about Israel's right to defend itself, etc. It just seemed to me, it's like, and I don't have this fully worked out in my head, as you can see, but it seemed to me that if you're a spiritual teacher, okay, if you're giving people meditative practices, if you're in the game, you should be able to say a word where you put your heart on the table for all these people who are dying. You should be able to say something about them, and you should be able to have empathy. And it seems to me that oftentimes this hyper-logical, hyper-rational, secular approach to spirituality is missing something, okay? It's missing something. And I wonder if it's not missing what the poop-eating tantric cannibal has in his practice. A kind of, they used to call it crazy wisdom. Tantric crazy wisdom. A kind of letting go of logic. And not, because when you take a very, or an only rational, or a secular approach, you're cutting yourself off to possible channels towards ways of experiencing and ways of thinking that are outside of logic and outside of what the secular world has to offer. And I wonder if, as a strictly secular teacher, in your khaki pants and your Oxford with your collar, pruning your language entirely of any mention of Buddhism or mantras or chanting or Shakyamuni or anything that might scare the HR manager at Google who might hire you to give the workers there mindfulness classes, okay? When you prune out all that language, I wonder if you don't kind of put yourself in the bubble of secular Western thinking, and you know that bubble is a problem. Like that, you wind up not being able to say, hey, despite all political considerations, throwing bombs continually on a city and killing lots of people, that's wrong. It's wrong. 100%. I'm not even saying you shouldn't do it. I don't know. I'm not a politician. I don't know. But not being able to say, hey, that's wrong, is a problem. Now, needless to say, like a tantric, cannibalistic, poop-eating approach to the spiritual project also has its problems. For example, my friend tells me that this guy is very sort of paranoid, like very kind of paranoid, like conspiracy theories, thinks that he's being watched from his computer. My feeling is he has gone so deep into a different point of view, into an archetypally primal religious point of view. He's gone so deep into that he just sees everything through that deeply sort of spiritual perspective. Whereas on the other hand, the Sam Harris crew has pruned all of that kind of stuff away and sees everything through a purely logical, rational point of view. Somewhat experiential. Sam Harris will say you have to practice meditation in order to experience anatta and no self. So there is that aspect of things, but mostly he is logic forward, rationality forward. So what have we done today? We've put two approaches to the spiritual project on the table. The primal spiritual religious-istic point of view, that of the tantric poop eater, cannibal, and the highly logical, highly rational point of view of a secular humanist. 2 points of view, 2 approaches to the spiritual, very different approaches to the spiritual project, 2 very different problems resulting from them. This is what's been on my mind today. Now, perhaps most of us are somewhere in between these two. Here's what's been helpful for me lately. Opening my mind to more sort of woo-woo, if you will, while also holding a certain kind of skepticism towards woo-woo, and ultimately keeping the Buddhist principle of no attachment first and foremost. So not attaching to my logical, rational, secular side, my icy cool, hyper-intelligent inner Sam Harris, who scoffs at all the woo-woo that's out there, right? Not attaching to that guy, all right? Not attaching to my inner Sam Harris, but not going too far in the direction of maybe this woo-woo is real, Maybe if I'm sitting here praying, which I do more often now, I'll say the help prayer and I'll put my energy and focus into the help, but not getting attached to that practice, not beginning to imagine that there's some God out there that's listening to me, not attaching stories to the prayer, okay? Not attaching anything to it, just doing the activity with my complete heart and my complete soul. In the same way, that when I'm doing my Zazen practice, I give myself completely to the exhale and completely to the inhale. So I'm trying to have, I really am more and more coming to the opinion that there are more things, Horatio, on heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophies, our rational, secular, humanistic philosophies, and our tantric, cannibalistic, poop-eating philosophies. So I'm trying to keep, not trying to keep, my mind is opening more and more and more, and I'm trying to not attach to what it finds in its openness, and not telling stories about what my open mind finds, and then giving myself a reason to believe in it and go down some tangent, right? Anyways, friends, I hope that was somewhat helpful to you. If you want to support my channel, which I feel is also your channel, because I love getting your comments. You guys send me emails as well. Gives me energy knowing people are watching this channel. So if you want to support this channel, you can go to this link right here. Patreon.com/Shozan Jack Hobner. Come over there. We got essays, blog posts, and a nice community of intelligent, independent, free-thinking, sincere spiritual practitioners, mostly Buddhist, but not entirely. Come join us there. Otherwise, hit subscribe and hit like, if you will. It helps this channel. And I'm out of here. Have a good day, friends. Ciao.